Mystica. Real documented mysteries. Records first, explanations last. A person is seen, then gone. And the paperwork can't agree on how. So here's the question. If nothing moved them, where did they go? We're not doing science fiction tonight. We're looking at what the record can't explain. One ground rule before we start. Teleportation, describes how it looks in reports, not a claim about physics. So we'll separate what's documented from what's assumed. Because every file has two versions, and they don't always match. So we begin with an older paper trail, an early 1800s disappearance tied to official travel, and a man never conclusively found. That brings us to Benjamin Bathurst. And the timeline breaks in a way the record never fully repairs. Bathurst was a British diplomat traveling in 1809. Accounts place him in Perleberg, stopping at an inn during a tense period in Europe. The setting is ordinary on paper. Courtyard, carriage, attendants nearby. Which is exactly why the gap feels so sharp. According to accounts often repeated in later summaries. He steps away briefly. There's a momentary separation. And then, he's simply not there. Searches were described as taking place, yard, routes, surrounding areas. But the record doesn't give a confirmed body, capture, or clean escape narrative. That's the teleportation-like feeling, not magic. Just the optics. Present, then absent, with no satisfying line of travel in the retelling. Now notice what the paperwork can't give us. We don't get one locked timeline everyone agrees on. Later retellings smooth rough edges. Early accounts leave ambiguity about minutes, angles, and who saw what. And ambiguity is where impossible stories grow. So we map conservative explanations first. Abduction, robbery, political violence, a staged disappearance, or a blind spot in the courtyard. Each explanation still needs a mechanism that survives scrutiny, and that's where the file stays open. So we keep the force out and stay with the gap, and the gap is real as a historical fact. A documented figure disappears from the timeline at a specific time and place, and never returns to it. Now let's move to a modern-era case with intense public attention. 1926, England. That brings us to Agatha Christie. Her car was found abandoned. Contemporary reporting describes a highly public search and widespread speculation. And in cases like this, speculation is a machine that never stops. Because fame warps interpretation, and gaps turn into headlines. In broad strokes, the sequence is documented. A disappearance, a major search, and then a reappearance days later at a hotel under a different name. But the how becomes messy quickly in retellings. And to the public, that mess can feel like teleportation. Because from the outside, it looks like a clean cut. Present, then absent, then present again, with missing time in between. And missing time is oxygen for impossible movement claims. So treat it like a system failure. Which steps are verified? And which steps are inference dressed up as certainty? That brings us to weak points every case shares. Identity and citing reliability, especially under rumor and pressure. And when thousands watch, noise starts to look like evidence. That matters for every teleportation-style story. Because instant movement often starts with one thing: unreliable location data. So the next question is, what about cases tied to chaos, conflict, and mass loss? For that, we enter wartime records and wartime myths. War produces confusion, and confusion produces stories that harden into fact. One example often cited is tied to Gallipoli in 1915. You may have heard it as the Vanished Regiment. But the responsible question is, What is contemporary record? And what is later legend? A vivid detail isn't the same as a war diary. Some elements appear more strongly in later recollections than in immediate documentation. So the next question becomes, how do myths attach to real losses? The documented base is grim and ordinary. Incomplete records under extreme conditions. Units are lost, men go missing, certainty collapses. And into that collapse, the mind inserts a clean narrative like instant removal, because it feels like an answer. So here's the investigative move. Separate missing from teleported. A wartime missing status can mean unrecorded death, capture, misidentification, or paperwork collapse. So the record supports loss, while legend supplies the mechanism, and that pattern repeats across history. When documentation is incomplete, imagination completes it. So the next question is, can this appear in peacetime too? It can, through sudden reappearances. Cases where someone returns with a story that doesn't line up neatly with external evidence, and the mismatch becomes the mystery, not the claim. So here's the lens for this whole episode. Teleportation-like incidents often resolve into 4 categories in the record. Category 1. Real disappearance, missing mechanism. That's the Bathurst-style gap. Category 2. Identity and location confusion. That's where publicity distorts reality. Category 3. Documentation collapse, where legend outruns logs. Category 4. Deliberate staging or concealment. Not always fraud, sometimes survival, fear, money, shame, or escape. And the record may hint at motive without proving it. So what's the point of this video? Not teleportation, but missing data. Records are strong at anchors. Tickets, registers, correspondence, vehicle locations, documented searches. Things that leave traces, but they're weak at the unobserved minute. And the unobserved minute is everything. Because teleportation-like stories live in the cut between 2 sightings. So how do you measure that cut? With consistency. Independent witnesses, aligned logs, matching times, confirmed locations. And when they don't match, that mismatch is the real story. Revisit Bathurst through that lens. Core fact, disappearance, core gap, mechanism, core uncertainty, timing precision, and vantage points. So the impossible feeling is created by low-resolution minutes. Revisit Christie. Noisy sightings and narrative pressure. Revisit the wartime legend. Core fact. Loss, core gap, documentation, core distortion, later storytelling. So the impossible feeling is created by broken records. Here's the uncomfortable takeaway. You don't need new physics to get an impossible narrative. You just need missing links in a human system. And that doesn't make these cases boring, because the absence is still real. And the files still don't close. Families still never got answers. Timelines still refuse to lock. Official summaries still leave holes. So the next question becomes, what would actually close a teleportation-like file? Closure requires a mechanism, or a verified reconstruction end-to-end. Without that, the brain keeps the loop open. And open loops create a specific kind of fear, a world where location isn't reliable. So if someone claims instant movement, you need hard anchors that survive cross-checking. And most historical cases can't meet that standard. But that failure is informative. It shows where documentation breaks under stress, and where narratives fill the break with certainty. So think like a verifier. What is logged? What is witnessed? What is repeated? And what is only repeated as a story? Because stories evolve, while the original record stays messy and conditional. One last move before we close. return to the hook responsibly, without belief, without mockery. Teleportation-like incidents can be real as a pattern of gaps, documented inconsistencies, missing minutes. But the record rarely proves impossible movement, which means the true mystery isn't teleportation. It's why the mechanism stays hidden. Blind spots, human error, missing paper, or hidden intent. So here's the final question. What single document would change your mind? Timeline, custody, or reproducible mechanism? And if we don't have it, what do we call the case? We call it what the paperwork forces. Documented, disputed, incomplete, and still open. And open files are where real investigations begin. Subscribe to Mystica if you want real mysteries told like a human investigation, not like a rumor.